Members of the committee will come back in past Judiciary Committee again on April the 1st, a little after 3 o'clock. We're going to start with, well, can we start with it? We do. There's some parts of the quorum that I'm interested in maybe seeing to make sure that we do this fair. I see part of them. So we're going to start with Senate Bill 119. Senate Bill 119 we are secondary to HGO. We have to act or not. At the moment, this was held on Friday. I had some indication that perhaps an amendment was being drafted. I do not have any further amendments from the committee on Senate Bill 119. And so we are on the bill. It's a motion for a favorable and a second. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 119? Again, we're secondary. I'm also just very cognizant that we're coming back off a break, so I'm trying to be fair and give people the chance to get back here, but I wouldn't go. All right. Seeing no further discussion on Senate Bill 119, I will find my pen. All right. So as it was given to us by HGO, the vice chair.
Yes.
Yes. Crutchfield.
Yes.
Yes. Cardin. Yes. Sample Hughes. No. Embry. Yes. Pasteur. Yes. Tolles. She just stepped out of the room. Schmidt also is out of the room. Simmons. Yes. Boucher. No. Phillips. Yes. Roberson. Yes. Tomlinson. No. Erican. No. Taylor. Yes. Simpson. Yes. Grammer. No. Moon. Yes. Valentine. No. Conaway. Yes. Kaufman.
Yes.
Yes. Williams.
Yes.
Yes. The chair votes aye. 15. We're sending it to HGO with favorable. Thank you very much. Going now to Senate Bill 134, which you just heard today. Members of the committee should have an interlineated copy of the correctional ombudsman bill. I will, as I mentioned during the bill hearing, we will move the amendment. Let's do that first. The amendment is 953227, and the amendment's been moved and seconded. So we'll go into the discussion on 134. What the amendment does is a couple things. One, it indicates that any money from justice reinvestment, there are funds in the justice reinvestment program where there's savings that comes from justice reinvestment. I will tell the committee that I was uncomfortable with funding for correctional ombudsman being taken from JRA, not because I don't like correctional ombudsman. Personally, I like the correctional ombudsman bill that's before us. My concern is I didn't want it paid for with savings that we were getting from the justice reinvestment program. That money is supposed to be there for reentry. It's supposed to be there for drug treatment. It's supposed to be there to get people out and into programs that can help them. And so to that end, if it were up to me, this would be covered in the general fund. However, because the budget is what it is, they need in the first year, there is a outstanding fund balance that would cover, I believe it's $1 million from the JRA that would pay for the correctional ombudsman in fiscal 25. So that is there, but one of the amendments is that they can't take from JRA after fiscal 25. This is going to be the last year for that. And then it'll go into the general fund where it should be in the first place. Further, it also adds a couple people to the board and adds to the purposes of the board, the Correctional Ombudsman Advisory Board, to help develop processes by which complaints are submitted, reviewed, investigated, and resolved. And it adds a couple people with experience working in larger agencies so that they can provide experience to help build this new agency. And makes it very clear that no member of the board may be currently employed to the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services in a supervisory capacity. It allows for a non-supervisory correctional officer to be on the board. It doesn't allow anyone a supervisory capacity because it's the correctional ombudsman who's supposed to be doing oversight of the corrections of DPSCS. It would be wrong to have someone in a supervisory capacity on the board that is overseeing basically itself. So we make that change to the bill. And did I get, those are the bigger 30 to 45. And the administration asked that they have 45 days to respond to complaints as opposed to 30. Well, the administration actually at one point asked for 60 days to respond to complaints as opposed to 30. So we're meeting them in the middle, and with the agreement of the sponsor, both sponsors, we're making it 45. So we're meeting in the middle.
Promptly on page 8.
Page 8 of the. I have the reprint. The office shall promptly inform a complainant of a decision not to investigate the complaint. We add the word promptly in a couple places so that the office has to act, well, promptly to tell complainants when they file something what's gone on with their complaint. We don't want them sitting on it because that would be just as bad as anything else. The goal with these amendments and the reason that I'm putting them forward is that it's an important issue. We want this correctional ombudsman's office to work, and we want it to work quickly, efficiently, and provide relief for people where it's appropriate. And I think these amendments help to go some way to doing that. But before we vote on this, I wanted everybody to, because a lot of these have come quickly. I wanted people, we're not going to vote on this set of amendments today. I wanted you to have them and ask any questions you've got about them now, and then we'll go from there. Delegate Kaufman.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question for you, if I may. My question is that I understand the necessity to rob Peter to pay Paul in this one particular instance. But I know that you said that the funds are typically used in many cases for drug treatment assistance for individuals. And so I know that's something that we both really care about. So are you confident with even diverting these funds that there'll be an adequate amount of funding for drug treatment? Never enough, but an adequate amount of funding for drug treatment with this diversion of funding?
I feel okay with one fiscal year. I absolutely don't if it goes any further than that. And I think that as this committee and as many members of this committee and committees across the street have put in bills again and again for greater emphasis on reentry. We talk about reentry all the time. Yeah. The fact that there is a fund balance there waiting to be used on something that could be going towards reentry is a little concerning to the chair. But having said that, for this purpose, this one time, fine. But perhaps there is another question for the Board for Justice Reinvestment to make sure that these programs are being emphasized and moved forward as opposed to finding new things to spend the money on. So to answer your question, and I'll bring it to my day job for a second. There are people who get released into drug treatment programs that are paid for by Justice Reinvestment in part. And so that, to me, to help those people, quite frankly, I want less work. To have those people go into those programs and to come out better is what we should all want. And so I would not do anything that would stand in the way of that. I don't think that this 1 year and this one chunk of money would do that.
Okay, just a final thing, and I certainly understand, and it's not directed at you. I have a tremendous respect for you, but I just want to state for the record that I'm not thrilled about this, and I will be supporting this diversion, holding my nose.
Okay, following up on that, can you share some of the conversation around diverting that money, and what will happen in this year in the interim? I mean, do we all just stop the world and no one re-enters or needs any support? So what happens? I'm not even sure.
I
know
feel
that there's a
comfortable
overage.
that there is a fund balance there. There is money in the funds that is not yet, that's not budgeted. It's not going to mean that drug treatment is going to stop. It's not going to mean that reentry programs are going to stop that are funded by JRA at all. There is a balance there, and we all have heard repeatedly about the tight fiscal times that we're in. They were just looking to not add to the general fund burden for this year. They wanted to, and the advocates and I would like to see the ombudsman get up and running. That's fine. If this allows that funding to happen in fiscal 25, great. But in fiscal 26, the governor is going to have to find room for it in his budget. And that's going to be part of the regular budget process going forward. And in the meantime, JRA could start look at the Board for Justice Reinvestment. I hope we'll start taking a closer look at where they could be funding reentry programs in particular and further drug treatment programs as appropriate.
Well, if I may, I certainly want this office to happen. So what has the governor or anyone said? I'm trying to just make sure there is a real commitment to this after this year being in the general fund. We must make that commitment so both entities are going to be working.
So part of the discussions that I had over the weekend and at the end of last week with the sponsors also included the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, or whatever we're calling it now, and the new GoCap that was something else. And I feel, I'll speak for myself, I feel that the Governor's Office also has a commitment to this office. They're ready to get this moving, and they're ready to try to find someone to fill this role in the way that it's drafted in the bill. So I feel confident that they will find those funds going forward. But I guess what's happening here, at least with my amendment, is laying down a marker of please don't raid Justice Reinvestment again to pay for this.
Thank you.
Delegate Sample Hughes, then Cardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was holding on to your every word because I was thinking I was going to get the rest of the answer that I have, or the question that I have answered. But anyway, I was just curious, just as you said in your daytime job, you're, supporting and suggesting that people get the proper treatment that is needed. But I guess the point for someone who's not in that role is, what does that look like statewide? You know what I mean? Like, how many people have been introduced into treatment? And if we're going to quantify it by saying, they're not going to take any more than $1 million, but we don't want, say, like, come towards the end of the year and we said, oh, we've tapped out, we can't provide any more treatment to these persons that are in need. So is there like a backup plan for additional funds to be available? Or are we saying that there's just a cap on it?
I think that right now, I believe, and I believe certainly for the next fiscal year, there is enough money to ensure that existing programs are still able to meet the need for people who are seeking drug treatment. There's a section of the Health General article where people get released directly into treatment, sometimes outpatient, sometimes inpatient. And you'll hear it used 8505 and 8507. Yes. So this is that kind of treatment, among other things.
Right.
I believe that there is enough where moving this money will not hurt that. And I don't think they're going to run out of money before the end of the year. If that were to happen, the governor's office would need to come in with a deficiency to figure that out. I don't think we're going to come into have that kind of a problem. They also work closely with local departments of health, and so they can also help to find alternatives for people as well. But I genuinely don't believe that it's going to be a big problem this year. I would begin to be concerned if it was another draw on justice reinvestment and on what that money is used for in the long term. I don't even 1 year longer, I would be uncomfortable with that.
Okay. And then my last question for you. I know where we've always talked about that there isn't equitable resources or programs throughout the entire state. Programs that do come available, are they often funded through the same mechanism, through the justice reinvestment?
I think
Or
it's one of the
support?
mechanisms that can be used. It's not the only mechanism that can be used. There's, and I think even some people get private insurance that can
Mhm.
pay. There are other options that are out there, that it's not just justice reinvestment. The idea behind justice reinvestment was that we were going to change the length of time that people were incarcerated, and then take the savings from them not being incarcerated and put it into the treatment programs that they could use instead of being incarcerated in
Right.
some cases, or the rehab programs that and reentry programs that can put them on a better footing to move in a different direction in the long term, further lowering incarceration. So to that end,
Okay.
that's sort of the bigger picture here. I
Okay.
don't think that for this 1 year would do some significant damage to those programs as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for all your hard work on this. So first of all, I'm gonna get to my second question first. It looks like the bill requires the OCO to review potential federal funding sources so that there's long-term, it's set up in a way that it creates long-term, what's the word when you are, yeah, when you have fiscal.
Grant funding options.
Fiscal sustainability, thank you, whatever it is, okay. It also, so that's still in the bill, right? Okay.
Yes.
And then it also moves the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit from the Office of Attorney General to the OCO. That is not related to this ombudsman stuff. Is that also?
So to be clear, I was speaking specifically about the amendments that we were making to the Senate bill. The Senate bill did have amendments, and Delegate Crutchfield made reference to them in the hearing earlier today, that the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit would also be moved into an independent status outside of the Attorney General's office. So it would move out and would be on its own as well, on top of that. The budget line item for that section. So there are two things. One, that there's nothing in the amendment that is before us right this second that deals with the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit.
Fair enough.
But as a preview of the conversations on the bill going forward, the budget line items just shift, and they become, and they don't lose funding, they don't gain funding, they get the same thing that they were getting before.
So that brings me back to what this conversation is about, Mr. Chair. If you can humor me for 1 second. So they're asking for $1 million or approximately $1 million. But
I believe that it was $1 million,
Okay.
and
that is
that's
to
what-
basically staff this new office. It's
Yes.
mostly gonna, I'm assuming it's mostly gonna be payroll. And if they can't come up with funding, they're going to create a new office, gonna spend $1 million, it could be used for something else, and then have to either reduce the office staff over in a year, or take that money from somewhere else. It's something's gonna happen that's gonna require them to either find more funding or reduce the office.
Well, the first thing that has to happen is they have to hire an ombudsman. So that's number one. Then they're going to have to staff the office. My understanding is that the budget language that's in the budget language that was referred to by Senator Hettleman, I believe it has $1 billion there for the initial creation of this office. And then, yeah, they're going to have to, the challenges, and honestly, some of the concerns that I had that led me to add a couple people to the board is wanting to make sure that there are people on the board and that are working with the ombudsman directly who can make sure that they're setting up this agency so that it can hit the ground running as soon as possible. And that means people who can kind of speak the language of larger government bureaucracies a little bit, while at the same time not being people who are working at the agency that they're seeking to oversee. So trying to balance that out was a challenge as well. So they have a lot to do in the first year, but the governor's office in my conversations seems confident that they'll be able to do that.
So it sounds like this train is running at full speed. I am not going to get in front of the train. I will, but let me say this, as just as a, similar to Delegate Kaufman, is that it seems to me that this money is already being used for very important, or is already intended to be used for really important, vital programming that we do not want to take it away from. And while I think that this office is a great idea, and in the end, it may both be self-sufficient and be really good at efficiency and creating things, I am not sure that we should set it up in a way that it may find itself gasping for oxygen in 365 days. So I think that maybe it ought to be done in a way that maybe we could pull that amendment out, if it's possible, and make it contingent on funding from other sources. It could be something we do that. But again, maybe greater minds can think about it better than I can. I'm just saying that I think that we could be setting ourselves up for wasting a lot of money and time and valuable resources.
So I spoke with the chair for the Public Safety Subcommittee on appropriations, and we had some good conversations sort of broadly on that issue. And again, I don't want to set this up to waste money at all, and I don't want to see this set up to fail. At the same time, I think they have this coming fiscal year problem, but the commitments that have been made to me from the governor's office make me comfortable that that's not going to be an issue going forward, and that's fine. The fact that there is a fund balance to be taken from within the Justice Reinvestment is perhaps something that the Justice Reinvestment Board should be looking at. And then I'll be in contact with them and others in the committee, if they'd like, can do that too, to say, what's going on? Why, if there's money to be put into reentry and other programs, why isn't it going into reentry programs? And I think that's a question that they're going to have to answer too. The main reason that the thing that brought me to wanting to put an amendment on this in the first place was making sure that JRA was not used in the long term for that. I don't think that that it will leave it gasping for air or anything after a year, because I think the governor will keep it going, and they'll have a better idea of exactly how much it will take to do different versions of this.
I think it's great. I just don't think enough.
Yeah. The vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of things everyone's talking about with respect to the cost benefit analysis of this bill as amended. I'm not sure, but I believe there's a balance of 13.1 million in JRA, and I'm looking over there. Okay, that's not true. I thought it was. Okay, forget that. Right. But there's also, I'm just looking, and I was just Googling the lawsuits that have been filed. Now, this part I do know is true. There was a $7 million award that was given by the state of Maryland because of an inmate who was beaten and paralyzed. So that's $7 million right there that would have paid for this program. I'm not stating that the ombudsman program will eliminate all lawsuits, but at least we will have some level of notice beforehand, and perhaps we can reduce the need for lawsuits. The other thing is that this would be a government an agency, that falls within like all the other agencies that have been funded up until now. So it would, to me, the cost benefit analysis says, yes, go forward with the bill, as amended, and reduce our lawsuits. And make sure this agency does not change with each governor, that we keep this going because it's smart. The other thing is the bill passed unanimously in the Senate. Thanks.
Maybe it'll even pass unanimously in the House. Who knows? But having said that, are there further questions on the amendments? If there's not further questions on the amendments, I'd be inclined to take a vote on the amendments. And then I indicated to the committee that I wasn't planning on voting the bill, also in no small part because we have the House bill currently in our possession as well. So we'd be moving both of them. So my intention was to do that tomorrow and do both of them. but I will do the amendment now. Unless you have further on the amendment or on the bill. Okay, so that's fine. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hands. Anybody opposed? All right, the amendment's adopted. We're on the bill again. I'm sensitive to the fact I also have Delegate Davis's, the House bill here too, and we were gonna try and move both. Delegate Tolles on the bill. Bill,
We're ready. We're ready, Mr. Chair.
can I ask staff if, where did they all?
They all left.
Oh, you're over there. See, this is where you're supposed to be paying. Okay, great.
That is where you wanted him to sit.
That's fine. Could I have the folder, please? Could we get the cross file, the House cross file, and we can then go to the bill. Tom, okay, so we'll go to Tolles and Tomlinson. All right, we're on there's a favorable and a second on the motion, so we're on the bill as amended. Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna put on a different hat as second vice chair of the Black Caucus. I just want to thank you for working to try to get this bill out. It's a priority bill for Chair Wilkins and for all of the caucus members. So I just wanted to thank you for working to get this bill moving forward, and hopefully we can deal with those budget issues next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to talk about this subpoena part, because I'm a little stuck on that, and I was asking the sponsor about it. Because I'm concerned with the language where it refers to an individual. Talks about I'm sorry, page 15. Page 9 and 15 kind of cover the subpoena. Yeah.
I think I should turn on my microphone. 3815B. The unit may subpoena any individual to appear to give sworn testimony or produce documentary evidence that is reasonably necessary to carry out the unit's duties. If an individual fails or refuses to comply with a subpoena, a court of competent jurisdiction on application of the unit may issue an attachment for the individual and compel the individual to comply with the subpoena and appear before the unit and produce documentary evidence for examination and give testimony. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, appreciate it. So my concern with it saying an individual is, especially with where it's saying, the need to, the ombudsman would be asking to produce documentary evidence. And I mean, this could be, a correctional officer, this could be an admin, that works at the front desk, who is asked to provide some kind of documentation. And I know this, at my day job, I mean, whether it's the Office of Legislative Affairs or any auditor who asks for documentation, and I know this is an auditor is different from the ombudsman, is asking for documents to be turned over. I mean, there's a lot of people that these documents have to go through to get approved and to get to turn them over. I mean, a lot of people need to sign off on it, and I'm concerned that if we're giving the ombudsman the ability to subpoena anybody, rather than just saying the ability to subpoena the department, or even maybe if you wanted to be more detailed, like the secretary or director, rather than just saying any and everybody.
And I'm trying to remember the specific area of the law, but if they were requesting or subpoenaing a document from an individual, that individual would still refer that request to the Attorney General's office for them to respond to that request. Just because they're going to subpoena the individual doesn't mean that you have them working for a state agency the state agency would step into their shoes and say, okay, they're ultimately responsible for responding to the request. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that that one individual person would be hauled in if they didn't do it. We have a similar situation going on with the Department of Health and cases where there are contempt filings being filed, but they're not going after the individual person that's supposed to be completing an evaluation. It ends up going up against the state of Maryland and represented by the AG and then by the secretary of the agency. So I think that language is boilerplate. This language allows them to I believe it is boilerplate. If I'm wrong, somebody will say something, but I believe that it's language that would refer it to the agency to have to respond to.
Okay, yeah, I think you and I are on the same page. It's just.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't,
I mean,
don't
couldn't the language be changed to agency or department rather than pinning it on literally, I mean, because it says individual. And I do believe you, I'm with you that it probably, yeah, it would turn to the state of Maryland.
Would you say that? I can't.
Sure, I believe there will be individuals that will have information. I mean, we're talking about complaints, right? So there are often times when individuals make a complaint and they do have information. So it could be all encompassing. But again, as the chair mentioned, I do believe if it's straight documents from an agency, then that agent for the agency has to respond.
So you could have somebody who witnessed what happened in the sum and substance of a complaint. They would be individually summoned. It would be summoned still presumably as an employee of the agency, though. So the attorney general still would be stepping in and saying, okay, what information are you seeking from that person? Those rules are in a different part of the code, and I think that's what Delegate Crutchfield's getting to.
Yeah, and I agree that the attorney general's office would be stepping in. I guess what I'm getting at is we've got, I mean, whenever documents are asked to be turned over, whether it's to an auditor or in this case would be the ombudsman, I mean, you're going through so many levels of bureaucracy for it to be signed off on, including the AG's office. I mean, and it's a good layer by all means. And if the ombudsman's saying, hey, I need this by this date, this time, and you could have an individual who is like, hey, I got this done weeks ago and I turned it over, but it's been stuck in the AG's office. It's stuck at the secretary's level. And you're going to have an individual who's getting now being told that they're, in contempt because they didn't turn it over in time, when they're like, hey, I did my part, but now it's working its way up through the chain, which is a very large change in government. So I guess that's why I'm concerned on that we're putting this on an individual versus the agency or department as a whole.
And I still think that from a procedural standpoint, that again, the state employee that we're talking about in these cases are still going to have the attorney general stepping into their shoes. And when you're going to get to the point, when you get to the point where a subpoena is put out and the subpoena is not responded to, they're going to be filing in whatever circuit court to say, hey, probably actually here in Anne Arundel quite a bit, then they didn't respond to this. They're going to seek to, I guess, attach that specific individual. And again, at that point, the attorney general comes in and says, I am here to defend the state attorney, the state employee actors of state government. And so that they step into their shoes. That, I think that is just a regular term of art that we've even used in other parts of the code. But to that end, I'm going to stop talking and give it to the vice chair for a little bit.
So I think that it would also be the person who handles the PIA request, so that you're not necessarily, you may address it. Like, for instance, we get a request directly to us, but we would give it to whoever handles the PIA request. And then it's out of our hands, and then that person is responsible for producing the documents. The person who would be called to testify would authenticate and state, yes, these are the regular forms that we normally have in this particular business. Yes, this is our, if it's a human resources thing, they would say, yeah, this is our regular human resource form or our regular grievance form or whatever. But that individual is not necessarily, unless they're considered the custodian of records or the person who handles the PIA request, they would not necessarily be the individual who has to go around and hunt for the documents per se. There should be a method within the agency on obtaining those documents.
Oh, yeah, you're 100% correct. Yeah, I mean, a lot of agencies have a PIA liaison director. And again, I think that's what I'm trying to get at is who's the custodial of the records or documents.
Yeah.
And
we don't want to necessarily put the custodian of records or the person who handles the PI request in here, because we don't know who that person is, and different agencies call it different things. The other thing is that the other thing that I was thinking about was sometimes it's the person who would receive service or process. I mean, I think that I agree with the chair, and I was trying to find the language, and if I can find it in a second, or if Claire has it already, where this language comes from, because this is, I believe, to be term of art language that is normally used, but I'll see if I can find that as well.
Would that be possible because I know that I think the chair said boilerplate. I mean, is it possible to look at what other agencies who have ombudsman to see if that is how they refer to, do they refer to the individual or?
Well, I think the best comparison could probably be the Inspector General, maybe. I don't know if the Inspector General would be a good comparison here. I'm not sure. I was thinking because they handle, they're the oversight. So they would go to the agency and ask the agency for information, such as like a school board. They would ask the school board for information, and of course they'd have to go through and get all the documents together. Also, I know what I was going to tell you. The other thing is too, you can also get an extension. You can also request an extension if it is taking an enormous amount of time. So that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, so I'm going to run the risk of being called a conservative here, but I pretty much believe that government screws up anything that it touches, including the ability to incarcerate people. Last time I checked, all these correctional employees are state employees. Is that correct? So like, why do we have such a problem subpoenaing these people? Like, subpoena the hell out of them. As long as you're following the law here, I think it's. Some
of the healthcare employees might not be state employees behind the wall.
Sure, I get that 100%. So, for me, this is a matter of good government, especially considering some of the things we've come out of the correctional system. So I think it's pretty fair to have what I would be reluctant to do is try and pass a law to fix every single problem that we see in the news. I feel that having an ombudsman who can just take a peek inside the system on behalf of people who have concerns is a pretty reasonable thing. I don't have a problem with a system of subpoenas at all. We could get subpoenaed for 1,000 different things. And, these folks have a pretty extreme amount of authority over the people that they're overseeing. So I think it's a reasonable consideration. It's good government. It's well within the idea of what we should expect as far as oversight.
I guess, well, one, I know we've had this bill for the past several years. This isn't the first year that this bill has been introduced. So I don't think this bill is necessarily a response to recent news articles or anything along those lines. I mean, the concerns that have already been raised about just the funding mechanism moving forward, I do share those same concerns. And I hope moving forward, we're able to find a financially sustainable way to ensure that this program moves forward. But I think that this is an overreach of government. I think this is perfectly appropriate. We all have you know, entities that we have to report to a lot of times for malfeasance and things like that related to our professional capacities. And so I just see this as just something that is just being added to the Department of Corrections in terms of an oversight mechanism.
Vice Chair?
Okay, so just to beat this horse all the way dead, under Maryland rules, this is for Delegate Tomlinson, because I said I would try to find it. Under Maryland Rule 2-510, under subpoenas, the language is that the subpoena compels the person. Okay, so I know the word, the part individual is could, and you know, it is maybe the part that's catching you up. But this individual is working in an agency capacity. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I'm just saying it out loud. The individual is, the individual is working as an agency within this particular organization. Okay, so we have to have a person to serve this subpoena upon, as opposed to, because we have to, we're going to compel, the subpoena itself, by definition, compels you to testify. So that is the reason why this person could be held in contempt if they don't testify, if they don't produce the documents. It's not normally what would happen in this particular case, because they represent an agency, and they're doing something in their job on behalf of the agency. But if, like, for instance, if their superior told them to show up and they failed to show up, those would be the instances where an individual would be compelled. They wouldn't be compelled just because the documents can't be found or whatever. Okay, not generally. It's not a general compulsion. It's within the normal realms of the production of material for the agency. That may not have helped, but anyway, that's what I found. Rule 2-510.
So, and I'll go back to it from a broad perspective. If anybody who works for someone else is there's a subpoena requesting records within that business. This isn't, me, somebody subpoenaing me about my own personal property. This is, I am there and I have the documents for X, and the documents for X are in my control. But when I get the subpoena, I'm handing it over to the Assistant Attorney General or to the appropriate person at DPSCS, who then will act will step into my shoes and say, okay, you're asking for information. Okay, I'm here. To the person stepping in the shoes, the Assistant Attorney General will say, okay, here's us providing that information. And then if they don't provide that information, then you go after there's a contempt hearing, and I can tell you in different contexts, there are secretaries of fill in the blank agency that are being threatened with actual contempt if they don't respond to those things. So I believe that it's a consistent thing, and it's a term of art that we're looking at there. Delegate Phillips had his light on, but now it's not. Would you have said it a little better than I would? Which is fine. You get extra bonus points.
But the analogy of the Inspector General, all of the language is very similar. It's very similar. I mean, I hope, because it's very short. I mean, so Inspector General may subpoena any person or evidence for the purpose of investigating fraud, waste, or abuse within, and you name the commission within any of the commissions, land use, schools, et cetera. I just kind of went through and started looking at the IG's authority in various agencies.
Well, and again, it's not just going to be looking for documents. It's also going to be potentially, you could have someone subpoenaing an inmate at one of the facilities to provide evidence of what's going on in that particular unit. As I mentioned to Delegate Grammer a moment ago, it could be subpoenaing the doctor or the nurses to find out more about conditions within that unit, and they may not work at the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. And so It could be independent contractors. It could be any number of different things, but it has to be within the scope of the correctional ombudsman. And so that is what is boilerplate is the language that allows for the body attachment if they fail to respond. But I think before you even get to that point, the Attorney General is going to have to step in anyway. All right. Is it? The horse has been proclaimed dead by the vice chair. That is not in the form of a motion. That we have a motion, however, for a favorable in a second. We're on Senate Bill 134 because that's the bill that we amended. Senate Bill 134. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 134? The vice chair.
I just wanted to clarify one little thing that I said. And that is, I mentioned that the bill passed the Senate unanimously, and it did. But these amendments were not on that bill. So I just want to make sure I clarify that for the record. Okay? And both JPR and the Senate. Yeah.
Worth mentioning also that the bill is jointly assigned. We have to the bill's jointly assigned, so it's going to have to go to HGO in any case. Okay. Rachel, I'm sorry, Delegate Munoz. Delegate Munoz can repeat a questionable joke that she just told me. All right, I'm not going to do it right now, though. It was something, yeah, I don't know. I'm exhausted. All right.
We're done.
Are there seeing no further questions on Senate Bill 134? Okay. The vice chair.
Yeah.
The vice chair, yes. Munoz? Yes. Crutchfield? Yes. Cardin? Yes. Sample Hughes? Yes. Embry? Yes. Pasteur is a yes. Tolles? Yes. Schmidt? Yes. Simmons? Yes. Boucher? No. Phillips? Yes. Roberson? Yes. Tomlinson? No. Arakan? Taylor? Yes. Simpson? Yes. Grammer? Yes. Moon? Yes. Valentine? No. One moment. Conaway? Yes. Kaufman?
Yes.
Yes. Williams?
Yes.
Yes. All right, the motion is adopted. Members of the committee, we will now find the House bill. All right, so you don't have it before you, but I'm going to offer an amendment then that would conform House Bill 297, which is the cross file on the Correctional Ombudsman Bill, to be to conform House Bill 297 to the Senate bill that we just passed, Senate Bill 119. There's a motion for a favorable and second on that conforming amendment. All in favor, raise your hands. There was discussion. I'm sorry. Anybody opposed? All right, the amendment to conform is adopted. There's a motion to allow the votes on Senate Bill 119 to be the same votes to be cast on the House Bill 297 as amended. Is there any objection to that? Oh dear. All right, let me take a step back. Are there people who wish to amend their name onto the House bill? Oh, we can't do that because it's jointly assigned. I'm sorry. Never mind. It's here, but we can't do that. We run into a problem because it's jointly assigned bill. So the motion, going back again, is the motion is to say that the votes on Senate Bill 119 that were, I'm sorry, on Senate Bill 134 are the same votes that would be cast on House Bill 297. Any objection? Seeing none, the votes from the one bill go to the other bill, and that bill will be sent to the floor as well. All right, that's fine. We will have a voting session tomorrow afternoon, certainly between sessions. I expect that we will have 2 sessions tomorrow and the rest of the way every single day. This has been the House Judiciary Committee. A question on legislation or a procedural question? There were 2 members not present on 119. Delegate Munoz, would you like to vote on 119? Voting no. Delegate Tolles on 119, which is the gender affirming care bill. Do you wish to cast a vote? You were out of the room. So you were out of the room. Delegate Schmidt? Delegate Schmidt votes no. It doesn't change the outcome at all. So delegates Munoz and Schmidt cast votes in the negative. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much.